Just let me give you a little rundown on Captain Carter before he gets here. Uh, I know him because his last tour was as the CO of the of a cutter out of Charleston, and so again, as the Navy League on the waterfront, we worked real hard with the cutters that we have and what's growing right there. He's had an interesting career.
They haven't posted that it's gonna be canceled. But if you wanna go to Julia's game at 4:30.
Somebody want to mute who's got a background thing?
Yeah. Sonia, you should be able to mute the box that's speaking.
Okay. But the more, before he came and was CO of, I think it was the James. I'm looking at an older resume. He was the manager of enlisted personnel. And he came down and again gave us a brief in Charleston about managing the enlisted personnel in the Coast Guard. And that would have been from the period about 2 years ago for the previous 2 years to that. And of course, as you know, they had a huge problem with recruiting and moving billets around. But he gave us a really, inside look at how the Coast Guard manages its enlisted force. It was interesting. Coast Guard Academy. Some joint interagency tours. Joint Force Headquarters, National Capital Region. President's Emergency Operations Center at the White House, Coast Guard Liaison to Homeland Security. Graduate of Sam Houston State University, Master in Arts in National Security and Naval War College degrees, masters. Like I said, I know his last 3 tours were what I mentioned, so cool. So he asked what kind of audience he was talking to. So I sung all you guys' praises about everything you all in this do for legislative affairs. Washington Hill climb, District King, virtual things, and so he's happy to hear that. He says, "Now I know who I'm talking to," so he'll, I'm sure, have a little bit of maybe a legislative flavor to talking about the force design 2028. And when he comes on board, Sonia, I will ask him, I will make sure he has no objection to us recording it. Okay.
Okay, and when he comes on, I'm just gonna check with him because I think his email might have blocked sending out that attachment with the PowerPoint.
Oh.
Can we get a copy of the brief? Are we violating any protocol?
Well, we'll have to ask him and see whether we can or not.
Okay, fair enough.
And I may, so if we have, Sonia has a copy, I may ask him offline when I send him a thank you note, what kind of distribution. But I have heard him talk at a couple different online venues, and so I think we're probably getting a brief that is cleared as far as the brief's concerned, and the sensitive part may be comments he makes just to us, but my guess would be that the material in the briefing itself is probably cleared for public distribution.
Hi, everybody. This is Kevin Gallias. I had an interesting conversation with the commanding officer of the USS Constitution. She has a barracks, but the front of it is secure, but the back of it, there's backpacks right behind it, people leaving from bicycles. She's working with the Naval Facilities individual, the admiral, trying to get security on the backside of that barracks.
Okay,
I offered her assistance, and she said if she needs it, she's going to reach out to Legislative Affairs.
okay. Sounds good. Where are you, Kevin? You out for a walk?
Yes, I'm playing with my neighbor 4-year-old outside.
Okay. Oh,
He came home. He just came home in a pirate costume. So we're playing pirates out in the yard.
all right.
Well, I'm listening to you.
R.
Exactly.
There he is. You want to let him in? Captain Carter, welcome. Nice to see you again.
Jim, thank you, and thanks for having me. I'm sorry I'm a little tardy. I just ran from a meeting with the Vice Commandant, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, my AT&T watch still says 16:14, so we're good.
Good. I'm glad
They must run you fast at headquarters.
very much so. Very much.
Okay. So we have the group as I described. We have a part of our steering committee. If you look at the screen, you'll see Sarah Fuentes, who's our vice president for legislative affairs. And Admiral Sink Harris is there, who's manages our maritime policy development. And I've lost Jonathan. I lost John. Where'd John go? Where'd you go, John?
John, me? You don't see me?
No, I see you fine. I have
John Caskin's there too. He does
Caskin.
little square. He's there.
Huh?
He's there.
Oh, well, I guess he fell off my square.
Okay.
So anyways,
I'm here, all right?
all right, super. As long as you're here, we're ready to go then. So Sonia's going to bring up your slides. And you'll tell her when you want to switch slides. Is that going to work for you, or do you want to try to share your screen?
You know what? I saw that Sonia sent me an email. Maybe I'll just try to share my screen here, and that'll
Okay.
probably be easier.
Okay.
Let me see how I can do this here, and just let me know when you see a PowerPoint.
Yep, there it is. We got it.
Perfect. And let me see if I can go to. How does that look? Are you seeing it in a slideshow presentation?
Well, actually, we're seeing it with the other one I thought was the bigger one. This has talking points to the side.
Okay, let me.
There you go.
That look better?
That's bigger. Yeah, yeah. That's
Okay, perfect. Hey, first of all, whoever decided to invite me to this, can I just say thank you very much? And Jim, thanks for reaching out. Jim and I have a connection from my last tour down in Charleston, where I served as the CO of Coast Guard Cutter Stone, and my last operational tour in the Coast Guard. And so it stings a little bit to be back in headquarters, but I was a GO down in Charleston, so it's good to move back in with my wife and the last of our kids that are in the house. But it's great to be doing force design, and I'm excited that I got the call to do this. Mr. Planky, who's the senior advisor to the secretary on the Coast Guard, asked me to do this job. I was originally tapped to be Admiral Allen's EA. I was excited about that job, but more excited about Force Design 28. So I'll start by telling you up front what I want you to get from this brief. The first thing is, if you've seen one force design, and I'm sure you have, because about every service has done at this point, then you've seen one force design, and so they're all a little bit different in their own ways. The second thing I want to say is that what I'm going to describe to you today is really a process by which the Coast Guard is going to get at true force design, which is imagining new force operating constructs and operational constructs and how we operate our Coast Guard. Our Coast Guard is literally, our operational concepts are based off of operating assumptions and capabilities that existed before GPS was, widely disseminated throughout the fleet. We were relying on LORAN stations back whenever we developed our current operating models. And then the last thing that I would say, and I tell this to everybody, is why I really believe force design is different. Because everybody's seen it across every service is that, a new commandant comes in or somebody comes in and they identify, changes that are going to take place during their tenure, and they're all delivered with some varying degree of success. I think force design is going to be different than those. And I think that even though we put a date on it right now, I think we may go the way of the Marine Corps and pull the date off of it eventually, because we're going to recognize that there are some enduring changes, concepts in what we're doing under Force Design 28 that are going to better our Coast Guard long term. I think of 5 reasons why force design is different. The first one is it started outside of the Coast Guard. This truly started with the administration, with the secretary, and with Mr. Planky, who's serving as the senior advisor to the secretary. Force design touches every part of our Coast Guard. If you look at least inside the Coast Guard, large change initiatives in the past, they were targeting specific subsets. How are we going to recap this fleet of ships? How are we going to attract more people into our Coast Guard? Okay, we got more people into our Coast Guard. How are we going to modernize how we manage talent within our Coast Guard? This comes with a significant initial investment. That's the third reason. Other large change initiatives, you're trying to take them out of your base in terms of execution. This one, through the reconciliation process, the Coast Guard received almost $25 billion to apply to future resource capabilities and replace existing capabilities that are just not practical in maintaining. The level of integration of how we intend to execute this change, and I'll talk about this some, is, we up on this notion of, well, who's the flag champion? One who's shepherding this across our organization. And typically, some of the large change initiatives in our service, there's been one. Well, here there's 8. And I'll explain this process. I don't want to get too much into the details, but we're actually taking a business approach. We actually hired a company to come in and do some executive coaching on how to be able to do this. But we call it a table construct. There are table leads that are flag officers, and they are decision makers in carrying out what is under the execution plan. And then the last thing that I'll say, and this excites me the most as somebody who, in my heart still considers myself an operator, is that we're defining success based off of mission outcomes, right? So, there's certainly a task list that we want these tables to be able to accomplish. But if we accomplish all of them tomorrow and they don't move the mission needle, the operational needle, then we haven't succeeded. We haven't succeeded. So the Commandant has made it very, very clear to us that success is defined by mission outcomes in the product that we're delivering on behalf of the American people and the product that we're delivering, more importantly, well, I say more importantly, to our workforce. Because we're communicating both up and down on this one, and we need to get that messaging right. Again, taking a business model, this has been a rapid inject of capital. We need to prove to Congress that we can get it out of the building. We're typically a $12 billion a year Coast Guard. We got $12 billion this year, and on top of that, $25 billion of 5-year money to be able to move. We're not used to spending that much money that rapidly inside of our Coast Guard. I'm sure you in the Navy are used to dealing with that much money, and that may seem like peanuts to you, but I can tell you that, our contracting and acquisition professionals, our decision-making constructs inside the building, we're just not designed to move that way, right? We have for a long time relied on a system of peer governance, a deputies committee, a principals committee, where staff officers do pre-briefs to the pre-brief to the brief, and principals bat it around and send it back down, and you make decisions, over the course of 18 months and 2 years, and we just don't have that luxury anymore under force design and what we're trying to accomplish. I define it, and I haven't got my hand slapped yet, as the speed of professional embarrassment. Right? If you need to know the perfect end state before you go in and brief somebody senior to you, this is not going to be a Coast Guard where you sleep well at night. At the same time, too, Mr. Planky and the Commandant have given us the top cover to move fast, to learn. We reserve the right to learn. We reserve the right to move backwards when we have to, and we're advantage of that and making rapid decisions and getting money out. We just got the first allocation of reconciliation money, and we've already got almost $2 billion downrange to be able to recap some of our fleet. So we're excited about that. So let's see.
Sorry.
Yep.
Not to interrupt you, sir. Sorry. I just wanted to jump in because we needed to check up front and didn't get a chance. If it's all right, if we record this meeting and if we're able to somehow distribute the presentation, because a lot of the members who aren't here would like it.
Yeah. No, please. And I,
oh, perfect.
You'll see unclassification marks on there. There's nothing classified in it. And I stripped out a slide that had people's names on it. So this is actually an outward facing document. So please feel free to share. And the reason it has unclassified markings is because I do combine it with a classified brief every now and then. But this one is good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Captain Jonathan Carter. I'm a ship driver by trade, and I'm an OCS grad, straight off the street. Nothing special about me. And for some reason I got tapped to do this, and I'm excited to do it. So that's enough about me. The next slide. Okay. So again, an outward-facing document that you can find online. This is what we call the Force Design 28 Executive Report. You'll notice on the front of this is the Department of Homeland Security emblem. This is a document from our Secretary to the Coast Guard that defines a future state for our Coast Guard. It defines the challenges that the administration is anticipating, and more importantly, the role that they feel the Coast Guard will play nationally, both executing all of its authorities, operating as a joint force, and combating some of those challenges. It challenges us as a Coast Guard to be a more agile, capable, and responsive fighting force. And I emphasize those words, fighting force, right? Because we're not going to focus on cultural change inside of our Coast Guard, because we would just be spinning our wheels. We're going to focus on, just change in general, the processes of how we change. But a fighting force, that is the Coast Guard talking about. That's really the Secretary telling the Coast Guard, we need to talk about ourselves differently. We need to sell ourselves differently. What it's not saying is we're going to stop being a humanitarian organization, or we're going to stop doing search and rescue, or we're going to stop doing, prevention or aids to navigation, or any other of our statutory missions. But the mission is clear. We will be a better, more enduring service to our nation if we sell ourselves as a fighting force. And if we're good at being a fighting force, we're going to be really good at search and rescue. We're going to be really good at search and rescue. So while this was somewhat of a shock to some members of our organization, when you hear the Secretary, the Commandant, and Mr. Planky talk about it, it's really not. It's really defining a future state and for us to build a Coast Guard that can meet those challenges. So we're excited about it, and the Coast Guard writ large has been very excited about this, and I think they understand the nuances of this at this point. So how this came about, Mr. Planky, has been nominated to serve as the director of CISA. In January, he started having conversations with Secretary Nome about CISA. She started asking questions about the Coast Guard. He had served in the Coast Guard and has some strong opinions on that. They started talking about some readiness challenges in the Coast Guard that are 100% accurate. And then the Secretary started talking about this mechanism called reconciliation that the administration was going to look to do based off of controlling both houses of Congress and the executive. And Mr. Planky said, well, how much do you have to send to the Coast Guard? And the answer was zero. And so Mr. Planky, he's good at two things. He's good at finding talent, and he's good at raising resources. And that's when the concept of Mr. Planky serving as the senior advisor to the Secretary came about. And he really went to work with Admiral Lunday on selling what the Coast Guard needed to meet these future demands and to become a leader in technology, to increase the size of our workforce, and again, to become a more ready, capable, and agile workforce. And so over the course of that process, it started out with $8 billion, it went up to $14 billion, and where it settled out in the end is $25 billion in PC&I funds to recap certain ships, to grow the size of our fleet, particularly with regards to the Arctic Security Cutter. And so yeah, that was a significant commitment on the part of the administration to show where they wanted to go to the Coast Guard. And it provided us the top cover to take some risk in how we were going to change our organization to make that happen. Next slide. And please, I think I'll get through this in close to 30 minutes, but if you have questions in the middle, please let me know. So the first thing we did was, when the Secretary challenged us with this, we had to help. Obviously, there's not people inside of DHS to be able to draft a document like this. So we brought that commander's intent inside the building. We found several flag champions to get the right people in the room and do what we call sprints. Is we took some of these concepts that Mr. Planky and the Secretary laid out for us. We put the right people in the room to really drive towards change. What would we like to see across our Coast Guard? And we broke those up into what we call pillars. We called them campaigns at the time. And this is what I mean when force design spans the entirety of what we do in our Coast Guard. People, how do we want to change our workforce? Organization, technology, and contracting and acquisitions. These were really the four pillars where we thought we could gain the most ground in shaping what a future Coast Guard looks like and how our Coast Guard employs a future fighting force. And these are just some of the kind of the big muscle movements that are under each of those pillars. But she used language in there, that was almost shocking, particularly with technology, to rapidly develop and deploy technology and to be the leader across the U.S. government in doing that. I mean, that's pretty provocative language that is really challenging to us. At the same time, too, it's a challenge we're willing to accept. And she's given us the top cover to do that. 15,000 people. Before I went to be the CEO of Coast Guard Cutter Stone, I was the chief of enlisted personnel, where I assigned our enlisted workforce. And 15,000 people by 2028. Listen, that's a huge number for us in the current recruiting environment. Our recruiting enterprise is not staffed to do that. We have already maxed that out to the point where we have some recruits in COTS. However, it is a great target for us to look at, because I can tell you, having been the chief of enlisted personnel, that that number needs to be, and I recognize all the challenges that it means to bring those people into our Coast Guard. Contracting and acquisition, I hit this to spending this much money. The place where I'm seeing cultural change is in our contracting officer community. Asking them to move very, very fast in their response. At the same time, too, we need a number of acquisition professionals that we have in our Coast Guard. We're woefully behind in that regard. And it sounds silly to sit here and tell you that we're not very good at spending money, but we're not very good at spending money, and we've got to get better at it. Not that we're irresponsible spending money, because we're not irresponsible. However, spending it quickly and being able to use our budgeting process as a communications tool to the department, to OMB, and to appropriators is something that we haven't necessarily been very good at in our Coast Guard. So these are the 4 campaigns, and you'll see those as themes throughout Force Design. So when I first got here, the executive report charged the Commandant with providing the Secretary an execution plan within 30 days of signature. So when I first got here as the director of the implementation team, that product was already being built, and it went up in the form of really a memo with an attachment to the Secretary. And I kind of strenuously objected to that because I was frustrated that I was coming from an 06 command, and we had been talking about Force Design for 4 or 5 months, and I couldn't explain what Force Design was. And so I went to the Commandant and Mr. Planky, and I said, hey, I want to take what the Commandant is sending to the Secretary. I want to reword it, and I want to make it from the Commandant to our workforce. So we came up with the idea of an execution plan summary. So the execution plan went up to the Secretary, and then we took it and changed some of that language. We actually shortened it a bit, and made it a document from our Commandant to the workforce. So that's why you see the Coast Guard emblem on the front of this document. And the reason that you see summary is because we had to, indicate that we were not backing away, but it wasn't exactly what we sent up to the Secretary to do that. But what the execution plan does, it stops short of being a poem, but what it does is it defines strategic imperatives and key enablers under which we are nesting Force Design action items and how we want to change our Coast Guard. It establishes, and I'll just highlight that last line on way ahead, that's the table concept I was talking about. So we have 7 functional tables. They're staffed with flag leads. Flag officers are leading them, and most of the table members are flag officers too. So we have 4 what we call enabler tables, which are correspond with the 4 pillars: organization, people, technology, and contracting and acquisition. But then we have 3 outcome tables that sit over there. And those outcome tables correspond with the Commandant's value agenda, and he states these often. And it's actually language that the administration uses as well. Control, secure, defend the U.S. border and maritime approaches. That's 1. Facilitate the flow of maritime commerce with particular focus on strategic mobility. And number 3 is be able to respond to contingencies or crises. Right? We can't break the service that we're providing to the American people. So those outcome tables, where the enabler tables are showing up, and I'm handing them a list of things to do. Right? And they're nested under the strategic imperatives and those key enablers. The outcome tables, they're defining those mission sets. They're developing metrics to measure them, and they are thinking big. Because like I said, I'm giving these enabler tables 390 things to do. None of them matter if they don't move the mission needle. And so that's what these outcome tables are designed to do, is to drive the enabler tables to do what they think is best to move the operational needle and the service we're providing to this country. The outcome tables are key to the PPBE process. We're injecting them into the PPBE process by making them review and sync spend plans as we start to build those budgets out to make sure that we're moving, in a unified direction across our Coast Guard. So I don't want to get too much into the table concepts. They have already started convening. They are up and running. I just got out of a meeting with the Vice Commandant where we're talking about decision-making highways and executive management inside of our Coast Guard. But they are up and running, and they are excited, and they're going to do great things. Next slide. So, I wanted to find a way to communicate effectively at the E5 level. And you're going to see ends, ways, and means. And I assume, like me, most of you are JPM E2, and these don't exactly add up what we think. Think of the as the defining our organization. That's what that document does. The ways, how we're going to do that is the execution plan or the execution plan summary. The means for right now is reconciliation. I would just point out that if you open up the execution plan summary and you do a word find for the word cutters, small boats, helicopters, it only mentions them one time, and that's in the Commandant's cover memo. Because this is the ways, this is the how. It's not telling us the what, right? We know reconciliation is the what, but reconciliation is really a down payment for our Coast Guard. We're thinking about things in terms of fix, change, grow, and run. And when we think about how we define those, the ones that we're focused on are change and grow, because change and grow add the most value. If you're fixing something, you're just getting it back up to par, right? And just running is the day-to-day stuff that we have to do here. So when we talk about what you can do for our Coast Guard, and particularly in your role as the regional legislative affairs folks advocating to folks on the Hill, if we as a U.S. government think that we're going to give the Coast Guard $25 billion and continue to fund them annually as a $12 or $13 billion Coast Guard, we're going to go right back in the readiness hole, and we're not going to be able to do what the American people expect of us. The other thing that I would point out to you is that the means on this slide, that is all PC&I money. There's no O&S money in that. And I've already been up to Capitol Hill. The Commandant has tapped me to be the spokesperson for this, so I've met with the authorizers and the appropriators, and I've had this same conversation with them, right? Is that, in fact, I got the question from an appropriator, a staffer, that was, what's the most important pillar? And I said, people. And they said, what's the pillar that you think you're at risk of over-promising and under-delivering? And I said, people. Easy. And I came right back here and I told Mr. Planke and the Commandant that I said that. Does reconciliation free up some money for us in the out years? I think it does, but we're fighting that battle right now. 26 is in Pres Bud. We're looking at 27. We're looking at 28. Yes, some of this reconciliation money we were on budget for in the out years, and now we would like to take that PC&I money in the out years and convert it to O&S money so we can really focus on that people pillar, which right now we're not funded to do. But I came up with this slide, doctrinally it might not relate to this crowd, but I was really trying to speak to an E5 here, talking about ends, ways, and means, and how the executive report, the execution plan, and reconciliation all come together. The Commandant refers to force design and reconciliation as a binary star, right? So two different celestial objects that share the same gravitational space. So from afar, they look like they're the same celestial body. When you get up close, you realize that they're not. So this was our effort to try to tie these things together in a way that they would be digestible by an E5. And my computer just fell down a little bit there. Okay, and this is my last slide here, and I'll just turn it over for questions. But these are some of the achievements that we've done to date. I won't go over these individually. I'll just let you read them. typically, we only transfer our workforce at one time a year. The same 3 months of the year, we only have one rotation cycle, one assignment process per year in our Coast Guard. So there's usually a summertime lull. I would say that we did not have that with force design. We kept moving and trying to make decisions that were nested under the execution plan. I'll end with this. This isn't true force design. Force design is how are you changing your force posture and your operational concepts. We consider that phase 2 of force design, and the Secretary has tasked us to start that in October. And we're building out that process right now. We're working a lot with the Marine Corps on how they built out that process. But that journey starts in October. We've shaped that as another campaign with a series of sprints underneath there, and the Commandant has told us nothing is off the table. Everything from, the Coast Guard, the Commandant is a service chief, man trained and equipped, and the Coast Guard is an operational commander. Is that going to cause problems in a future fight? I don't know what the answer to that is, but he's challenged us to look at everything, to challenge, even our statutory missions. So we're going to go on this journey, and we're eventually going to get to the point where we're talking about, this 35-year-old operational construct where we have firehouses around our coast responding to SAR, and how we can do that in a more efficient manner in the future. And Mr. James, I see you have your hand up there, so you get the award for the first question. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. It's great to have you here with us. Bill James, I'm the Midwest region president for the Upper Midwest. So we cover the seas of the Great Lakes up in Minnesota and across the Great Lake region. And I read your slide here, and I've got a question about infrastructure, and in particular, the RIPET item that you have highlighted there. So a little case study thing. So in Duluth, Minnesota, we have 2 Coast Guard stations. We have the Coast Guard buoy tender spar there, and we also have a shore station that primarily services the port of Duluth. It's one of the, I'm sure you're aware, one of the top transit ports in the United States for lots of materials and so forth. One of the deficiencies there the Coast Guard has faced is affordable housing in Duluth. And so it's very costly up against the lake. A lot of mission creep on home values there. And so we have Coast Guard seamen that are doing 40-mile loops each way just to get work. And that's kind of exhausting, obviously, if you put in a full day at the office. And just wondering, within your FD and other plans here along with the additional funding, how does that flow down into that world if it does indeed flow?
So it doesn't. So first of all, thank you for that. And infrastructure is a top priority for particularly housing for the Commandant. We did get money in reconciliation for infrastructure, but the intent from Congress is that we're directing that for infrastructure to support those assets that we're bringing online. If you look at the RIPET team there, we put a team together to look at small, under $100,000 quick infrastructure items that we can move across the country and fix rapidly. I thought this was a brilliant idea, and the Chiefs Mess really owned that, to go out with the KOs, particularly to some of the units that you're talking about, which are those remote units that sometimes don't compete very well in the budgeting process. And so what we started to do is we looked at the 4 and 5 year money that we haven't spent yet, and we consolidated that into one fund, and then we used that fund to be able to make those changes. It's funny, that idea started with it used to be Coast Guard District 1, now we call it Coast Guard District Northeast. But somebody had made a coffee table book that had photos of all the infrastructure and habitability issues that our crews face. Doors without doorknobs on them, and somebody tied a knot with line to be able to open the door, or somebody having to sleep over moldy tiles. I don't know how it happened, but that got inside the building. And I'm glad that it did, because it really, it got in front of Mr. Planky, it got in front of the Commandant, and they really tasked us to come up with something quick to be able to do that. Now that's different than what you're talking about, Bill, right? Because you're talking about large scale infrastructure projects. We're evaluating that right now inside the Coast Guard and prioritizing where we want to direct funds. We are on budget for some, but not all, but that we cannot use reconciliation money for that, but it is certainly a priority. And it's not just there. That's the nature of how we do business in our Coast Guard, right? We recognize that we have outlier stations that are in very, very small communities. They're coastal communities where the cost of living is sometimes high, and we've got to do better for our workforce in that regard.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
So any more questions? John Kaskin?
Admiral, did you have your hand up? If so, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, John Kaskin, you're on mute too. Okay.
Yeah, I did have my hand up, and if I get people to shut up for a minute, I'll get my question out. All right. Hey, Captain, great to see you again. Bravo Zulu, well done. You're doing God's work. Having done 6 tours in this crazy town we call Washington, and 5 of them in the Pentagon, 3 on the Navy staff, 2 on the Joint staff, I've seen many of these plans, schemes, maneuvers, palms, and everything else come and go, and they're all mind-numbing and hard to understand. Yours is pretty straightforward. I would give you 3 things that you can use or not use, up to you. Number 1, organizations and plans always change, right? But your mission, the mission of the United States Coast Guard, has gotten more complex, more important to the safeguarding of our people, our seabed, our economy than ever before. Keep pushing that message. You guys, the world's wet and getting wetter, both inside the states and outside, all right? Keep pushing the importance of what you're doing and the impact you have on every single citizen. Number 2, I remember when the cooperative strategy for the 21st century came out for the Navy. It was, I think, one of our better documents, and quite frankly, we're reliving some of that right now again. But it showed me the importance of taking your message to the street, okay? Getting out and about, around the town, getting not just Navy Leaguers, but everybody else who's got, 3 people that get together in a barbershop talking about the Coast Guard, what you're trying to do with your force design, because the world is getting wet and getting wetter, because what you're doing is so important, and getting that message out so that Congress and everybody else is hearing that, because administrations come and go. All right. You got some reconciliation money. Great jumpstart for now. Who knows what happens at midterms? Who knows what happens in 4 years? Who knows what happens? All right. But getting everybody together. And then the last thing is get rid of that slide. Where's that slide number 5 that has all the dollar figures on it?
Yes, sir.
You need to get rid of that right now. Yes, and sir. Here's why, shipmate. Because everything costs more and takes longer than you initially estimate. Yep. I was with a friend of mine talking about SIOP, the shipyard and improved optimization plan that was $21 billion in 21 years. A week after it came out, I went and talked to the 4 at the time and said, hey, dude, is this really true? He says, no, it's going to cost at least 4 times that. Never put a number out if you can help it, because it always is more expensive, and it always always takes much longer, and then you just get hammered. So there's a 3 piece of advice. I'm out.
No, sir, thank you for that. And I'm going to start at the bottom and work up. You're absolutely right. And we've actually had that debate, and I can already tell you this is wrong. So, you know, if you talk about 40 MH60s, not going to happen. But the point of this when we were initially showed it was to show that the money is bucketized, and there are still, you know, we still have work to do to fund the rest of force design. The second thing I would say is, one, I appreciate you saying that, sir, and I'm going to take it off this slide now. But you know, Admiral Paparo briefed our Flag Corps when they did their leadership conference in the spring. And I was there because I actually had already started as Admiral Allen's EA. He said the same thing. He said, if you need me to come to Capitol Hill to testify on your behalf, just call me, and I'll come up there and tell you how important you are to what, you know, I'm trying to do out here in the Indo-Pacific. And we're just, I don't know why we haven't been good at that. And it's not worth even pointing fingers. We just have to recognize that, you know, the Department of Homeland Security, since its infancy, has been a very, you know, large department, you know, under a single person that, you know, has 22 basically operating agencies underneath them. 2 things I didn't mention that I'll mention here is, one, we are moving and we have congressional language in both the House and Senate bill and the Coast Guard Authorization Act to create a Secretary of the Coast Guard. And that's going to be new for us. And I think that we've already seen with Mr. Planky working, and he doesn't even have any authorities delegated to him from the Secretary. And that's what we would expect when we create a service secretary. But to be able to have somebody who has that connection with industry, to be able to go up and keep, you know, provide us a buffer from the politics, at least a little bit of buffer, and more importantly, advocate for us in a very frank way to be able to generate resources for us. I think there's going to be tremendous benefit to that. The other thing is how we talk about ourselves. You know, we've always communicated like we need Qatar. We need a 1.0 major Qatar presence. And that is just such an archaic way to shape for Congress, but even the American people of what we do. You know, I went downrange on my last patrol, and we set the record for the most cocaine interdicted in a single deployment. Well, to do that, I needed a Hitron helicopter, you know, and pilots, aircrew, and maintainers. I needed a UAS that was not organic to our ship, and the operators were not organic. I needed additional medical personnel, and I needed deployable specialized forces to augment my boarding teams. And that's a force package. And we don't talk about ourselves in terms of force packages. So one of the things that we're developing right now is, you know, okay, if we go with this force package construct, and we've already got it built up, how many do we need? And then what is the return on investment? How do we shape that in terms of, okay, if we have this many, you know, we know that we're controlling this much of the border. So we're really honing in on this force packages construct on how we sell ourselves, to be able to sell ourselves that way to the joint force and what we're capable of bringing to the fight, and more importantly, what we need from Congress, and to get out of the mindset of, all right, let's just give them the PC&I money to build one more national security cutter, but to not have additional deployable specialized forces teams, medical personnel, more importantly, the O&S trail that goes with it. Because we haven't had that maintenance support. I was the newest cutter in the fleet, and I was already having to cannibalize other cutters to get underway. Yes, sir.
When you talk to the Marine Corps, talk to them about the MAGTAF, because your force packages sound a lot like a MAGTAF. I'm out.
Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Kaskin.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. When I saw the original force design document, I was looking for a force structure, and it's something that Congress had been asking for years from the Coast Guard, is update the force structure. Now, with respect to icebreakers, it looks like you've come up with some new numbers, and that's been included in the and the reconciliation package. You've got 14,000 people coming. When do you expect to be able to do the work that you're talking about? I guess you said phase 2, to be able to give targets for long-term industrial base signaling so that they have an idea of what they really need to gear up to, or rather than this is a one-time tranche, that you really have a long-term plan, doing a little bit better than the Navy, which changes their 5-year plan every year.
Yeah, no, great question. And we truly are starting it next month. And I've already provided the comment on a list of things that we need to look at to be able to do that. We're taking a trip down to the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab to talk about their capabilities. One of the things that we lack right now is a rapid wargaming or modeling capability, and we're going to need to be able to do that. So we're having some conversations with some contractors to be able to help us do that. That's why I want to get down to McWill. I actually went to the Marine Corps War College and would actually walk across the street and do rapid wargaming of the EAB concept for them. And we just don't have that ability inside of our Coast Guard.
Hey, Captain, real quick, can't you get that for nothing from the Naval War College?
We actually had that conversation today, sir.
If you can't, let me know. I'll call Daryl D-Day Walker and tell him to get his head out of his ass and do something right.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. Out here.
Okay, Ed,
so
your next question, Ed. I'm moving on, Captain.
Let me put a bow on Mr. Kaskin's
Okay.
because I do think it's a good one. Yeah. So as you pointed out, if you look at that list for reconciliation, in my mind, that's fixing the Coast Guard. It doesn't necessarily add value. There is growth there, particularly with in two areas. Which are of interest. One is the Arctic Security Cutter. We're going to get 3 Arctic Security Cutters, Polar Security Cutters, and that's going to be a tremendous capability, not just for our Coast Guard, but for the entire Joint Force. The second one is domestic icebreaking. That's going to be significant growth in how we're doing that. But I suspect that this time next summer. And it's more than just what we're doing is more than just a fleet mix, right? Part of it will be updating what a future fleet mix looks like, but it's much more than that. It's how are we structurally aligning our forces to be able to employ them the right way? How are we aligned as a headquarters element? What's the use of the areas, in a future fight? Do we need the areas, or can we rely on the districts? These are all hard things that we have to be able to answer as we move forward. So it will take some time before the level of fidelity that you're asking for, to where industry can see, hey, the Coast Guard's clearly moving in this direction, and here's some points of integration with them. Right now it's early. And that's why I've been talking about, rapid modeling and wargaming. So, all right, who was next? Ed, were you next?
Yes.
Yes, Captain. Wonderful brief. Thank you so much. I was curious, in the larger Force Design 2028, is there a passage or a mention of the former Air Force, the Coast Guard Auxiliary?
So it's funny you say that. So there is, and it's based off of future operating concepts. So we're going to look at the auxiliary as well. So clearly the auxiliary is a voluntary force, but how we implement that into future operational concepts is where it calls that out. So okay, perfect. Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Please give my best to the Commandant. One thing I'd like to ask you is with regards to your growing mission, in terms of our charter, Navy Leagues itself, separate from the Legislative Affairs group here, our job is to educate the public. We could help you with that general mission increase if we can get a set of slides from you that would be suitable for Joe Public, not detailed legislative affairs. So if you could come up with something, we'd love it. And then we'll promote it. We'll go to libraries. We'll speak. We'll pull in the local Coast Guard from here up and here. I've got the Portsmouth, Portsmouth Harbor station here, and then I've got the district up in Portland as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll sync with Jim on that. And yeah, I mean we're still working with Congress to get our in strength bumped up a little bit, and we've got to get on budget for that. But 15,000, we need it, and so to be able to have a partner in messaging that, we would appreciate.
Thank you.
Sada has the last question. And
Sure. So there's a lot of pressure on shipbuilding right now with the desire to see more commercial, more Navy, this big Coast Guard push. I'm curious if there's any conversations happening in leadership and with industry to try and sequence that, or how are you guys going to compete for this limited shipyard availability? I know it's an impossible question, but I'm just curious if those conversations have started.
Yeah, well, I mean, we still have the Polar Program Office, where or the Joint Polar Program Office, where we're working with the Navy, particularly with our large icebreakers, not necessarily our domestic ones. The Coast Guard, I would say the Coast Guard has more options than the Navy does in terms of their shipbuilding. But at the same time, too, there's risks when we do that, and we've seen some of that in some recent acquisitions that we've had to. That we're still navigating on the best options for that. So, I think the key is to figure out, that the timeline at which we want to build them on, and making sure that we're, are we going to be able to sequence that? Do we need to sequence that? With the Navy, I'm not sure that we do, because I think we'll use some of the same shipyards, but some different ones as well. So I don't have a good answer for that, Sarah. I'm sorry.
Yep.
No, that's okay.
Thank you.
Everyone's thinking about it.
Yeah.
So she always asks tough questions, so that's why we like her. So thank Captain. Thank you very much. Most of the people you're looking at really are our experienced briefers. We will take on that challenge about spreading the Coast Guard word. I think we'll start right here with our group of people who want to go out and talk, besides just to our Congress folks. I do want to mention to you that we're still active in the parity pay action, trying to make sure that the Coast Guard gets paid in the event of a government shutdown. So that's something that's very high on our list at the moment. But I think, between what we do now and what we do as far as generic legislative affairs, taking on one service, given as well organized if you guys are with this force design to 2028, I think that we'll, check with our bosses, but I don't see any problem with us taking this on. So you and I can stay in touch, if you don't mind.
Jim, thank you for that, and thank you all for your time today. Again, to have it coming from the Navy League, I know is going to be very influential. We're not there yet, and really, this is nobody who has the appropriate knowledge of what the Coast Guard capabilities that we're going to bring to the current fight, to the future fight, doubts that we need a different Coast Guard. Reconciliation is a down payment, and for Congress, it will be a terrible return on their investment if they think that they can keep us a $12 or $13 billion a year Coast Guard. We need to be a $17 billion a year Coast Guard, and very quickly after that, a $20 billion a year Coast Guard. Otherwise, we're always going to be playing catch up, and that's exactly what force design is getting after. We don't want to be playing catch up with our Coast Guard.
I'm sure our maritime policy folks will take that on board. He's sitting there scratching his head. There you go, shaking it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain. Really appreciate you taking the time out, and I hope you get to go home soon.
I will not, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, you're there with your family now. You got to make some time.
That's true. That's
all
true.
Work, no play.
Yeah. Jim, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Take care, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we may have outlined a task for ourselves here. We are the Navy League, but I don't see anything wrong with trying to put together a Coast Guard story for ourselves. And at the very least, we have about 20 people here. That could be, 20 councils. What we really ought to do as initial thing is put a brief together and make sure we get it to all of our councils, and then start working, in our regions and that kind of thing. So I will work with the captain or his people and see what we can come up with. I think I now have a little red flag when we first started communicating, and it took him about 5 days to dig down into his email to find my email to him initially, but he said he tagged my name now, so I can be communicating with him. But you know, he's a great person. He did a great job whipping a new ship into shape and taking it downrange in record time. Yes, sir. Sink.
So, Jim, one thing, we're updating our maritime policy statement.
Yep.
We went digital so that we could update it. And one of the things that is in our update up front is a link to Force Design 2028. So
Okay.
we can certainly add to that. And then that would give everybody the same framework document to kind of launch from in their discussion. So you don't really have to recreate the wheel or make up some special working party. We're already on it, and just use the maritime policy statement that we're updating. And Sonia can make sure that you all are fresh and apprised of what we're doing. Over.
No, I absolutely agree. Sink. That's our philosophy here at Navy League is that everything we do and say is based on the maritime policy, and then we make legislative affairs action things, but it all has to be grounded in the maritime policy. So that's a good idea. We'll work on that. But I'll see, unless you want to go direct, I will see what I can get from him for you, unless you've sent your Coast Guard guy over there but I'm sure we could get some meetings with him for you for maritime policy if you want. Or is it still, who's John Acton? Who's your Coast Guard guy these days?
So I really don't have one. I got a note from President Salter that the recently retired McPog Jones was going to join in, so I'm going to grab him up. But okay. I see a note from Mark Stone. Hey, Mark, send me a note, or just send a note to Sonia and she can get it over to me. Happy to have you on board.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, and we can also have Sonia create like an evergreen voice to Congress that kind of shows support for the Coast Guard and the Force Design. So that way when people do these presentations and someone wants to do something, that gives them an action.
And then the next thing is, is it serious enough that, we need to do a letter to Congress or a voice to Congress thing besides the parity pay issue, or should we just wait a little bit more downrange when we have your maritime policy?
Sorry, say that again.
Is it important enough that we do a voice to Congress or do one of our letters?
Hey, look, I say hit them every way you can.
Okay.
Because it's hard for them to get their attention. All right. Yes. So you hit them high, hit them low, hit them in the middle, and hit them a gun. And once they go down, you kick them one more time, because you just got to keep saying. Look, there's a reason why the pastor still preaches the same sermon that John Wesley preached, 300, 400 years ago. Okay, just keep on preaching the gospel.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you all. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So we'll get into our regular routine. To be quite frank with you, given what's going on, we had this Coast Guard. I'd like to try and entice Navy and Marine Corps to come with us in the next couple of months. So I'll work on that and think maybe we can find a contact on that we could do something similar with them for our training in the next couple of months. Sound okay? Like a great idea? Particularly what the new CNOs came out with, his little 2 sheets of paper called, you have to remind me, I don't remember.
C notes.
Well, they had something else for them.
And C notes too. He just issued C notes too.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much. Any other business for us before we adjourn?
Just a couple of Washington updates. It's looking increasingly likely that we will get a short-term shutdown. We'll see what that looks like, but basically there's been no positive news out of negotiations. Whether it'll be long or short, I don't know, but I would maybe not make any flight plans for early October. And then secondly, too, for Luke's replacement, I've been helping Ryan and Mike with that as well, kind of screen the first batch of applications, and then hopefully we should have some interviews sometime soon. But that process is moving. And we've got some good folks in the hopper that we'll look at. So I narrowed it down to a kind of a top 20 for Mike and Ryan to review.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you for that update. Appreciate
Sure.
it.
Okay. All right.
So Sonia, you did get the PowerPoint from Captain?
No, I emailed him, and I'll just follow up after the meeting.
No, I'll follow up with him and, because I
Okay.
thought he was gonna send it to you, but so he didn't, so.
Well, I think he might have tried, but he ultimately, I think, sent it to Luke, and
Right.
me accessing through Luke's email with my permissions, I think didn't, for some reason, that wasn't possible to view as like a secondary user of the email. So, something on either his end or that end blocked the presentation from popping up.
Okay, I will, and I'll have a follow up with him and I'll see if I can get a copy and we'll clean it up and take numbers off that one slide since we know that they're gonna change. Okay, thank you so much. I will send him the thank you note and work the follow up with you and I'll keep you guys updated. Appreciate it.
Thank
If
you.
nothing else,
Thank you.
we're adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.